So a couple of things just from a language standpoint. When we get to that place, when we're getting to that place of, right before shutdown or blanking out or whatever happens to us when we really get into that true tornado of overwhelm, we start telling ourselves one of the most common messages is, I don't have time to take a break. I don't have time to get something to eat. I don't have time to go ground myself. Well, that's one of the, really use that as an indicator that you're almost there.
Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alicia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Okay, so today's topic is super timely. I was here talking to Jonathan about what we were going to talk about today, and I asked him, I said, I feel very called to talk about overwhelm. And he shared with me before we started recording that on the same day, we both ended up giving talks on the topic of overwhelm and developing resilience and how we manage overwhelm. And it was just so weird, the synchronicity of it all, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Divine timing, baby.
Right? So as you're listening to this, I'm sure there are people who can relate to that feeling of being overwhelmed. And I just had a birthday recently, and funny story. So a while ago, like before your birthday, you get this notification in the mail that you need to renew your license plate tags. And I got my letter and I was like, you know what? This year, I'm not going to stand in line at the BMV. I'm going to go ahead and write my check. It's like the only thing I write a check for. And I'm going to write a check. I'm going to send it in ahead of time, and I'm not going to have to go stand in line at the BMV. And so you will love this, Jonathan. I realize I have no checks. And so I decide, okay, I'm not going to deal with this right now. I move on to other things, doing many things, producing a summit, launching this podcast, helping my clients, like just being a mom. Oh yeah, there's that. And
that one.
And so at one point I remember going, oh, I need to order checks. There's something I was going to write a check for. And I couldn't remember what it was that I couldn't write a check for, that I absolutely had to write a check. Like there wasn't another option.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't remember what it was. So my birthday passes. My husband's driving the car that we need the tags for. And I realize, oh, I was supposed to get tags for the car. That's what I needed the tag for.
Oopsie.
And so as this realization is coming up that on top of everything that I have to do, I am now going to have to go to the BMV to get these tags. And this is like the last thing that I have time for to do today. And so I started to, for a moment, feel that overwhelm creeping in. And one of the things that I've learned is, and by the way, I want to tell you on this topic that Jonathan and I have no idea what each other are going to say or what our opinions of overwhelm are. You have your research, I have my research, you have your experience, I have my experience. And So I just wanted to say that piece. But one of the things I've realized in the work that I've done for myself and what I have taught my clients is that overwhelm is oftentimes associated as a feeling. And I've actually connected a thought to overwhelm that has helped me immensely to stay out of overwhelm. I think of overwhelm as the thought behind it for me is I am not capable of getting it all done, or I'm not enough. And as soon as I identify, oh, I'm feeling like I'm not capable or I'm not enough, and I go, well, that's not true.
Yep.
That's not true. There's just a lot happening and it's not the most convenient. So that's one thing. That's one of the first places I am aware of to go, but it's not always easy to do when you're like,
in the
oh
middle
my gosh,
yeah.
Everything's happening. But I also look at I would love to know how do you look at overwhelm? Just like breaking down what is overwhelm.
Well, there is tons of really good research and therapeutic approaches in the clinical world related to overwhelm and some of the, I would call it symptoms of that state of overwhelm, of catastrophizing and exaggerating and self-deprecation, and all those things start coming in when you're in that state or that mindset of overwhelm, because it really is. It's a place that you can get to that can be hard to pull yourself out of when you're in the midst of it. I think I like how you said there's an emotion or there's a feeling associated with it, and you've come up with a thought, because there's an emotional trigger usually, or an emotional state that we feel when we get to that place and we start in the negative thoughts related to overwhelm. So having something to counter that, like you brought up, is really important. I think overwhelm is not something that happens in an instant. It's something that builds. One of the things that we can do is learn to spot it early on. And when we're starting to get to that place, take some steps to de-escalate or to keep it from building any further. Because it's a domino effect. And once you get to a certain tipping point, it's hard to come back from. That's when people have panic attacks or, go into some sort of really negative pattern of behavior, or they just shut down. Another podcast here, elements of procrastination actually come from that sort of state of being in overwhelm. I think that there are a lot of approaches you can take to deal with overwhelm, and maybe that's a whole podcast in and of itself. I was talking about some of those strategies. But some simple things, I think, are learning to recognize when we're headed that direction.
Yeah. I think you said something really key there. And that's one of the pieces is when we think about overwhelm, it's more of a state of being.
Yes.
Versus an individual emotion. If we had to go through and name emotions, there's other emotions that are part of the state of being of overwhelm.
Absolutely.
And what I see happen often is, and where people get really frozen up, is around that level of overwhelm that we get to where our nervous system is just completely taxed. And you're talking about the shutdown, or we're going to avoid and procrastinate. We're going to get really tired, like your energy level will tank, or you just can't even think straight.
Yep.
What I wanted to really go to first is, recognizing before we get to that point is great. But what about we're in that state? Like you're like, okay, I'm in overwhelm. I am, because I think before I realized there's a thought, before I learned how to manage overwhelm ahead of time, I really was one of those people that got into to the shutdown, the procrastination, and I have had a few panic attacks in my life, which are upsetting in a very big way. And so when you're in that state, the first thing I tell my clients to do is, okay, we got to get back in our bodies. We got to ground ourselves and just calm the nervous system down. So can we talk about that first?
Yes, absolutely. So a couple of things just from a language standpoint. When we're getting to that place of right before shutdown or blanking out or whatever happens to us when we really get into that true tornado of overwhelm, we start telling ourselves one of the most common messages is, I don't have time to take a break. I don't have time to get something to eat. I don't have time to go ground myself. Well, that's one of the really use that as an indicator that you're almost there. When you tell yourself that, counter that immediately with, okay, that's an indication I need to take the time to do this. And when I'm saying take the time, I'm talking about 5 minutes. One of the things, and I had a mentor teach me this years ago, it was actually a martial arts teacher. And this is a grounding technique that's super simple, and you can almost do it anywhere. If you have a window or somewhere you can look outside, it's sort of a connecting with nature type thing. But it's a mindfulness practice that I just call it being with nature or sinking in with nature or something like that. So find a window, or if you have the ability to actually step outside, it's decent weather or whatever, go to a window or step outside, look at the sky or look at a tree. I love to look at a tree, especially when they're leafed out and there's a little bit of breeze, and focus in on the specifics. Look at the tree first, then go to a branch, then go to a section of leaves, then go to one leaf, and just pay attention to the detail. Pay attention to the mastery. Pay attention to the wonder of creation and nature itself. If you're looking at the sky, pay attention to the clouds. Pay attention to how blue or how gray, the variations in colors. Get in on a focus of something specific, but allow what you're observing to flow through you in a way that you feel it. Feel the wonder and amazement of nature, of the breeze, of the sun in your hair, on your head, the wind on your skin, and start paying attention to those details. I promise you, if you can put yourself in that for 60 seconds, if you can take a whole 5 minutes, awesome. But if you can put yourself in that for 60 seconds, your state will change. Your mood state will change. Your biochemistry changes. You sink in and feel, like Alicia said, back in your body. It helps you balance out where your biochemistry, where your neurochemistry started to go, and towards that cascade effect of depletion. That's one thing to try. Another thing that's super easy and you can do anywhere is breathe.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go, is like breathing. And I learned something really recently from actually my DO about breathing. If you put your hand on your chest and your breathing is moving your hand on your chest, then you're not fully breathing. Like that's
Right.
not the most helpful type of breathing. And so my husband and I both, we've really worked when we are doing any kind of meditation or anything to put our hand on our belly, and it's your belly that should actually be moving. And we even teach our kids like belly breathing and like putting something on their tummy so that you're breathing into your belly. And it's been like, we were even doing it from an alignment standpoint, being able to like just relax our muscles and align.
Yeah. A super simple breathing meditation that takes literally a minute. It's a 5, 5, 5, and 5. You put your hand on your belly because you're absolutely right. Diaphragmatic breathing is much more effective. So 5 breaths in, hold for a count of 5, 5 breaths out. And on the 5th breath, blow out for 5 seconds until you're completely emptied your lungs. And then do that 5 times. 5 breaths in, hold for 5, 5 breaths out, and 5 seconds on the last breath. Do that 5 times. It will make a huge difference.
Yeah, amazing. And again, just some quick things. Overwhelm happens. Obviously, we're not here to give medical advice. Like there are many healthcare practitioners that, you would want to consult, but these are just things that we do in our everyday life to stay in our bodies and in our heads, and how we manage just the life emotions that come up, the life things that come up. Now, let's I call it building resilience. So like you're talking about managing, like starting to recognize it before it happens.
Yep.
and then being able to recover, right? So if you've had a state of overwhelm that is overwhelming, then now let's get into recovery. Like, let's get into what are we going to do to get back to work? Because the stuff didn't go away. It's still piled there, right?
Right.
And so I call it building resilience, but like really getting back into what we need to do now to stay out of overwhelm.
I guess you could call it some symptoms of overwhelm or building to a state of overwhelm. And one of those things in psychological terms is often called catastrophizing. And it's where we linguistically and cognitively make things worse than they are by using language to describe it internally in a very extreme way. Well, if one more thing hits the fan, I'm just going to die. Now, that sounds like just an exaggerated statement, but in some form, when we put that kind of thing out there, we have emotion and we have biochemistry that feels that level of extreme. One counter that I like, and Alicia knows this, I love using humor for myself. I mean, that's hugely helpful for my own stuff. And I like to use it with working with other people and in presentation type situations as well. And it's usually pretty goofy, stupid humor that nobody gets but me. But if it keeps me calm and on track, then, it's serving some purpose. But really, you can do that. One of the things that I have used with clients and patients is ask yourself, really, is it really that bad? Am I really going to die? And, and sometimes we have to come back and really have sort of this very honest conversation with ourselves that says, and it's okay to acknowledge, sometimes I feel like I am going to die. And that's that panic attack thing Alicia was alluding to earlier. You can feel like you're having a heart attack or a stroke, or, you're not able to breathe. Acknowledge those things too, of course, but often we are exaggerating to a level where it does border on the ridiculous. And if you can find the humor in that, it changes your mood state immediately. In fact, you have a hard time not laughing at yourself every time it starts to creep back up. It's like, really? Again with this? I call it my Jewish grandma. Really? Bugger. Again with this? Come on.
I'm good about using humor in the hindsight, right? So that's when I know I'm like getting over it is like, I'll remember that time when I kind of lost my cool. and so that's where humor comes in for me. So one of the things that I do is I treat everything as neutral. Nothing is happening to me. I just forgot to write the check and didn't have the checks. And so now I need to go. This is just something that needs to be handled in my life. And that may mean that my day is going to be rescheduled and that things that I thought that I was going to be able to do, even though I'm on a deadline, getting ready for a summit and in that process, this is something that has to be handled just for legal aspects or that I choose to handle.
There you go.
I could let him run around without tags for a little while probably, or I let him take my car or whatever, but I chose to handle it in the morning. And the other thing is really deciding what has to happen, maybe reprioritizing things. What can I outsource? What can I ask for help around? And then what things are just outside of my control? And what am I making my inability to complete something mean? If I don't record that presentation that's supposed to go onto the summit today, what's going to happen? Nothing really. If I really think about it, there's about 20 people who
exactly
should have access to it who don't yet have access to it, but it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of told them ahead of time that was coming soon. And so it's reassessing, when do things really need to happen? And then what is the judgment I think other people are going to make if I don't do it in that way?
Yep.
So I really get into how do I fit this in versus how am I going to get all this done? What does it look like? How do the timelines change? And also, what can I just not do?
Yeah. Yep. And sometimes it's a simple thing you can take off your plate that makes a huge difference, for parents, for moms, especially where the mom is typically in charge of meal prep or whatever. if you're in one of those states where you've got lots of plates in the air, you're juggling lots of things, and you just decide, you know what, tonight is going to be a pizza night. We are getting pizza. We're going to have, make it a fun thing. Pizza. I'm not cooking tonight. That saves me an hour and a half of my time. Easy meal, easy cleanup, bing, bang, boom. You've added that time to your schedule. So, I think it really is looking at those simple strategies. It doesn't have to be anything complicated that does take care of that. But you alluded to something that I think is really, really important. This goes kind of back to the catastrophizing thing. We often are giving ourselves messages about staying on track or staying on task or doing this other thing. I can handle this. And we're trying to be positive about it and in terms of taking on more. But often we're self-sabotaging because we're trying to live up to somebody else's expectation of something. When you need to be very honest with yourself and say, what am I capable of in this moment? And be able to do it so I will be proud of it. So I will feel good about it. So it will be truly helpful to myself and others, whatever it is that you're shooting for, and use that as your scale instead of, some external implication of perfection or good job or whatever it is. Sorry, this is a bit random, but I just got a thought from something you said on the intro. This is all related, I promise, but language is so important. The messaging we use with ourselves and being aware of that and becoming more and more aware of it. When you were building the subject at the very beginning, you used the phrase, everything I have to do right now with everything I have to do. And that's not necessarily bad or negative in and of itself. But even if we can just adjust that just a little bit, all the things I'm able to do right now, all the things I get to do right now, it changes the dynamic and the energy in such a way that we get to start thinking about the fun and the joy and the opportunity and all those things instead of the chore that it's become, because it's just one more thing.
Yeah, I often use the get to and I choose to do. It takes conditioning, right, to change that over to the
for sure.
from the have, because how often we say have. In fact, when you were talking about, I don't have time, I was like, oh, there are so many light bulbs going off, because that is one of the main excuses that I hear is I don't have time. But we all have the same amount of time, like no matter what, like every single one of us has the same amount of hours in a day and a week. And so I had never put together, I don't have time with overwhelm, but it's like that way that we excuse ourselves or reduce the intensity, because it's like, it's not my fault. I don't have time. It's not my fault. And so that I have stopped saying I don't have time, because I finally realized like it wasn't supporting me. And it took me a really long time to let go of that phrase. I was really committed to using it. And I hear a lot of people really committed to using I don't have time, but it has really helped a ton with the feeling of burnout and overwhelm, because it's a matter of what we're choosing to do and not do.
Yep, exactly. And that passive and active in terms of choosing or feeling like we're controlled by circumstances are hugely different in terms of what they do to us. Us taking control and choosing and being in control of our time has a much more positive impact than feeling like circumstances are driving us. So,
yeah. And so when we talk about like you were talking about the making pizza that particular night. And what's so funny is underneath that, like I love to cook. My husband loves to cook too. So I'm really lucky in that way. And also we are very conscious about what we put in our bodies, because food affects us and food affects how we feel. Our whole family, we notice if certain foods affect how we feel. And at the same time, the thing that our kids will remember if we do a pizza night is like, remember pizza night? Pizza night's awesome, right? Because so I think that you also have to step back and look at it would be very hard maybe to think like if you believe in making home cooked meals or providing meals in a certain way that, oh, I'm not living up to my core value. But I also value quality time.
Mm-hmm.
I value joy. I value experiences. And so pizza night is an experience, and it can be a lot of fun too. So sometimes it's a shifting perspective and watching for the black and white rules that you've put on yourself. We call them big assumptions. You're going to very frequently hear us call them big assumptions about what is true. And it's like, well, if I give my kids pizza, then I'm a bad mom or whatever.
Parent. Yeah.
Bad parent.
Exactly.
Right? And it's like, yeah. And also your kids may look at it in a different way. Like it's a fun pizza night.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that you said something that's very important in terms of the black and white thinking. And I love that you went ahead and brought up big assumptions, because I think have lots of ground. There are plenty of things to cover related to that subject area. But when we can build in, tracking back to a word you used earlier, resilience. Resilience is not black and white. Resilience is all about the fluidity of any given situation, any given moment, and understanding how to maximize whatever we're doing in a positive way. So if when we start catching ourselves, it is either yes or no, either or. That's another indicator that we're heading into that state of overwhelm. We're building our own conditions that will put us into a place of overwhelm. Again, just stop yourself. When you catch yourself with that, stop yourself and ask yourself some questions. Is it really? Are there alternatives? Are there other things I can do? Is there a different way I can approach this? Man, there's so many directions we could go with this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the last thing I want to leave people with before we end is also, as you're trying to move things off of your plate or ask for help, notice the places where it feels dangerous or uncomfortable or unsafe for you. Because oftentimes we think that the world around us isn't available to help us, but really it's our perception. It's, well, if I don't do it, it won't be done right. If I do ask for help, someone will say no, but maybe it's the way that you asked. So be aware, just start paying attention. That's what I would say. It's like, just start noticing where it feels uncomfortable or unsafe for you to take things off of your plate. And that's probably has more to do with you than what the world around you is willing to respond to. Absolutely.
And that was a really good, I have to go back and watch that myself, because that's a really good definition of mindfulness, what you just said. So, which will be also other podcasts, because we're learning that whole mindfulness and the state of being able to be an observer and be neutral is tied to positive health and positive health behavior across the board. So another subject for another day.
I know. So, and as we're having these topics, I want to say that you may have questions, you may have ideas, things that you're experiencing in your life that you'd like to have us discuss and get some clarity around, or if we don't know, we'll find someone who does, or do the research on it, or figure it out. This is part of our journey too, in being able to have a whole human experience. So if you have things that you would like to discuss, I would encourage you to email us at hello@consciousedge.com and ask your questions and give your ideas there at hello@consciousedge.com. So we're going to wrap up for today, and I will leave you with, I'm sending you love.
Be well, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes, and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.